Greetings, brothers and sisters. It's the Treetop Flyer coming back at you again for another podcast with my friend from the Truth Ark. We did one a little while back that got a lot of very, very good responses. So we're going to continue in this, what I think is an emergency or certainly an urgent situation. Now, I'm a master builder. I've been a builder all my life. My father was a master builder, and many generations in my family on that side were master builders going all the way back to the 18th century in Philadelphia. So I understand foundation. Foundation. You've got to lay a good foundation to build anything on. So I'm going to continue with the foundation that we laid in the last podcast about taking a look at the past and bringing it forward to understand that we are duplicating many of the same mistakes we have not learned from history, or the same agendas are being brought forward and the same lies being told and the same terrible things being perpetrated upon humanity that have already been done in the past that we didn't learn from. We're here in the so-called Emerald City, Seattle, in the great Pacific Northwest. Kind of an overcast day, that's nice. We need the rain. Never complain about the rain. You can't live without water. And the scientists are already predicting the entire western United States is going into the worst drought in 1,200 years. So you're going to be very glad for all the rain and all the water that is essential for life. Seattle and Portland have become the examples being used all over the nation and all over the world as cities that have been damaged very badly by this entire agenda, leftist, socialist. I used to play music in these cities all the time. Now we only come back here when we're doing, today will be, after this podcast, a very important freedom rally and freedom march for freedom of choice, freedom from lockdowns, freedom from control and interference in our lives, freedom from unlawful mandates, freedom from very dangerous, experimental, medical interactions, injections, and devices. We must have the freedom of choice on all these things. Now, maybe when you were young, you were taught some concepts, heaven and hell. And heaven supposedly was somewhere up there in the clouds with an old man, yes, always a man, always a he with a white beard and apparently a laptop supercomputer, judging and either rewarding for the good and punishing the bad. Maybe you were taught that concept. And then you were taught the concept of hell. And hell was somewhere always below, down below. That's the earth. But that's where hell supposedly was. But I have a news flash for you. Right here is the gates of hell. Right there. See that? There's the real gates of hell. You thought it was fire and brimstone and suffering and the wailing and gnashing and eternal damnation and punishment. But there is the gates of hell that's totally involved in all these things we're going to talk about today that are being perpetrated on all the people of the world. There is the gates of hell. So, I'm going to back up now, like I said, and we're going to go back further into the past than I did in the last podcast, where I focused on the Nazi era issues and things that happened that turned out in this terrible World War and the terrible Holocausts that are always being put in front of us when it's not the only Holocaust by any means in history, and certainly isn't the only one. But we're in the middle of one right now. We're in a genocidal Holocaust. We're going to talk about that. But I'm going to go back as far as 1773. That's 3 years before the Declaration of Independence or the creation of the American independence, 1776. An agenda was laid out by an individual by the name of M.A. Bauer. Before the name was changed to M.A. Meyer Amschel Rothschild. Rothschild means red shield because they hung a sign in front of their offices or their building where they began their financial monopolies that would eventually take over the whole world with a red shield, a red coat of arms, a red sign, Rothschild, red shield. But before that, the name was Bauer, B-A-U-E-R. So in 1773, here's the agenda that was laid out, and I want you to carefully listen and ask yourself, hasn't all this happened or is happening right now and is continued into the future with the agendas that we're in the middle of right now? 1773, a wealthy goldsmith and coin dealer named Meyer Amschel Bauer summoned 12 wealthy and influential men to his place of business in Frankfurt, Germany. The purpose of the meeting was to impress upon them if they pooled their resources and their efforts, it was possible to control the wealth, the natural resources, and the population of the entire world. An agenda for global world control. What we call today, and has been called by all the people in positions of power for quite some time, the New World Order. At that point in time, they simply called it the World Order. So, M.A. Bauer, to become M.A. Rothschild, outlined a 25-point plan to accomplish this. Here are those points. Use violence and terrorism rather than academic discussions. Number 2, preach liberalism to usurp political power. And boy, that's going off the charts right now. Initiate class warfare. Are you kidding me? Look at right now. Race warfare, class warfare, economic warfare. They're maximizing that. Why? Because it's the easiest way to divide and conquer people and create civil wars. Number 4, politicians must be cunning and deceptive, as any moral code leaves a politician vulnerable. Number 5, dismantle existing forces of order and regulation and reconstruct all existing institutions. Oh my God, boy, are they doing that. Reconstruct all existing institutions. Number 6, remain invisible until the very moment when it has gained such strength that no cunning or force can undermine the agenda or the plan. Number 7, wow, we're in this one for sure. Use mob psychology to control the masses. Without absolute despotism, one cannot rule efficiently. Why do they think they have the right, the prerogative to rule absolutely efficiently the populations of the world? Number 8, ready for this one? Advocate the use of alcoholic liquors, drugs, moral corruption, and all forms of vice used systematically by agenteurs to corrupt the youth. This city began its crumble before the George Floyd incident, the Black Lives Matter, before the Antifa issues, with a horrible drug epidemic. First came the crack, then came the meth, and then came synthetic opioids, which is absolutely crippling the city. There's been some good videos made about that. That was intentional warfare. These are acts of war perpetrated upon the population to weaken them. Way back here, 1773, they laid that out. That's not new. Number 9, this one's happening too. Seize properties by any means to secure submission and sovereignty. Excessive taxation, confiscation of private property, confiscation for violations of any laws, rules, regulations. That's absolutely rampant on all levels of government to this day in America and around the world. 10, foment wars and control the peace conferences so that neither of the combatants gains territory, placing them further in debt to these financiers and therefore into their power and control. Why do you think all our recent wars are police actions? United Nations police actions. In this way, they circumvent the elected representatives from their actual declarations of war, which they're supposed to be held to, and they create civil wars and emergency actions and then justify gathering up troops from other countries to intervene in those police actions, and they steal the resources in the middle of these things. If you can't see that's happening all over the world, you're not paying attention. Number 11, choose candidates for public office who will be servile and obedient to our commands. Oh boy. So they may be readily used as pawns in our game. I certainly think we got that one happening right now. 12, use the press for propaganda to control all outlets of public information while remaining in the shadows, clear of blame. And this is absolutely what people are rebelling against in a huge way all over this country. The complete control and dominance and censorship of information. We cannot allow that to continue. We absolutely cannot. 13, make the masses believe that they have been the prey of criminals and then come running in to restore order and appear as the saviors. "14, create financial panics and use hunger to control and subjugate the masses." Now, we had 9/11. Suddenly, the total focus went to global terrorism. We created wars to fight global terrorism. We hammered the economy hugely. Everything was shut down for months. You may remember that. That was the first great attack of the millennium, 9/11. Then, if you remember, the 2008 financial collapse, which nearly brought the world economy to its knees. So right there, create financial panics and use hunger to control and subjugate the masses. When the economies collapse, when civil wars happen, it interrupts the production of food. People always end up in starvation mode sooner or later. Look at Africa. Look at many places around the world. This is what they do. 15, infiltrate Freemasonry to take advantage of the Grand Orient lodges to cloud the true nature of their work in philanthropy. What was that over here at the gates of hell? Philanthropy, tax-free, gigantic foundations. The wealthiest people in the world put all their wealth combined together in tax-free foundations while you get taxed more and more heavily every day and are trying to survive. Then they use those tax-free foundations with the guise of philanthropy to export their agenda all over the world. And nobody is more guilty of that than here at the gates of hell. They've been run out of India, they've been run out of Africa, they've been run out of the Philippines, where they've done enormous amounts of damage, pretending to protect the world from disease while inoculating the world with many diseases. It is a horrible crime against all of humanity. "16, when the hour strikes," now this one's really interesting. "When the hour strikes for our sovereign Lord of the entire world to be crowned, their influence will banish everything that might stand in his way." Well, who and what are they talking about here? Their sovereign Lord? I don't think it's the one lots of other people mean by their sovereign Lord. To be crowned over the entire world? 17, use systematic deception, high-sounding phrases, and popular slogans. The opposite of what has been promised can always be done afterward, because no one remembers, because no one learns the lessons of history. 18, a reign of terror. What did I just say about 9/11? Everywhere there was a terrorist hiding in the bushes. A reign of terror is the most economical way to bring about speedy subjugation. Now think about that. You create reign of terror, you scare everybody, and you put them under control, pretending to be the white knight who is riding in to rescue them. In the Nuremberg trials after the Nazi era, some of Hitler's main people, I can't remember if it was Eichmann or which one said it, but they asked him, how did you manage to get the German people to go along with all this horrible stuff? And his answer was, it's simple. You simply have to find their fear. And then with propaganda and endless repetition, make them afraid. And they will allow you to do anything because of that fear. There have been many studies done. If you subject people to fear information and fear propaganda for 60 days straight, even then if you come in afterwards with information that contradicts the fearful propaganda, after 60 days, the majority of people will continue to believe the fear because it's become a subconscious mind program they're unaware of. 19, masquerade as political, financial, and economic advisors to carry out our mandates with diplomacy and without fear of exposing the secret power behind national and international affairs. The son of M.A. Rothschild, when he became the head of the Bank of England, was famous for saying, "Give me control of a nation's currency and I care not who makes its laws." And that should be pretty obvious that that has now been done virtually everywhere. 20, ultimate world government is the goal. It will be necessary to establish huge monopolies, like these guys right here, like that other giant monopoly that's named after the largest river in the world. a few others. You know who I'm talking about. I don't have to say their names. Giant predatory business models that build monopolies and then merge with other monopolies for such power and control, there's no way to rein them in. Number 21, use economic warfare. That is certainly happening as we speak. Rob the Goyim of their landed properties and industries with a combination of high taxes and unfair competition. You're going to tell me that isn't what's happening? By the way, Goyim is a term that means cattle to these people. They think we are their cattle, their possessions. They feel they have ownership over our sovereign beings and our sovereign lives. We need to make it very clear they do not, and we will not stand for that, and we're not going to go this direction. But we have to be as unified in that as they are in this agenda, or we will lose. Number 23, call it the New Order or the New World Order, and appoint a dictator. Wow, who's going to become the dictator of the New World Order? I'll bet the competition for that is fierce. Who do you think it's going to be? Who's rising into that position? There are a number of people whose names you would not recognize that I know about that are vying for that position. We'll cover that another day. Number 25, twist national and international laws into a contradiction, which first masks the law and afterwards hides it altogether. Substitute arbitration for law. This is where we have this situation to where cases go to our Supreme Court, decisions are made that are clearly unconstitutional, but they get away with it because they've been given the supreme power to decide what is constitutional and non-constitutional or unconstitutional. And then that's used as a precedent from then on for everyone who wants to further manipulate the power into the hands of the state, the government, or the few. That has been going on rampantly, and you can't see it any better than what just happened in the case of the stolen, rigged election, though they abdicated responsibility rather than take responsibility in the heat that would come with it. They dismissed the cases for standing, they dismissed the cases for technicalities, but that's not going to fly. People are not going to let this go. They're bringing it up and up and up and up. Sooner or later, the truth will come out. So, that plan I just read to you, those points go back to 1773. Now, the family I named there and their co-business partners essentially own virtually the entire corporate structure of the world. They essentially own the entire banking structure of the world, and the few countries they have not gained absolute control over are the ones they have created absolute war and destruction in, to destroy them into position where they have to be forced under the control of them. Look at Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest oil resources in the Western world, maybe the entire world. It was the wealthiest country in South America to a few years ago, and look at the disaster they have engineered in Venezuela to this day. People are starving. It's a gunfight battle every day to survive. They've eaten the cats and the dogs. Starvation is happening. It is an utter nightmare. Now, just look at what's happened in a lot of American cities in the last year. Before this year, if you tried to tell people America could become another Venezuela very quickly, they would have said, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're nuts. But look at the disintegration of American cities in one single year, and it's just getting started. So I want you to really keep that in mind as this thing progresses. Now I'm going to go to something else that brings it forward to 1981. This is a very direct statement, quote, by a prominent member of the Bilderberger organizations. I'm sure you know who they are. If not, research and look it up. One of the more powerful organizations in the world, formulated or fomented by the plan I just read earlier to dictate policies to the world from beneath the surface or from outside elected representation. 1981, Jacques Attali. Here is their mindset, and here's the agenda he announced in 1981. The future will be about finding a way to reduce the population. Back to the gates of hell, the number one eugenics financier and proponent of global population reduction, right there in the gates of hell. Of course, we will not be able to execute or build camps like in Nazi Germany, but they are doing so. They call them quarantine camps, COVID camps, contact tracing camps, okay? We will get rid of them by making them believe it's for their own good. We will find a cause or cause something, a pandemic targeting certain people, a real economic crisis or a fake economic crisis, or a virus affecting the old and the elderly. It does not matter. The weak and the fearful, I'm going to say it one more time, fearful will succumb to it. Put the mask on, social distancing, put your children in a saran wrap bubble, don't go out of your house, don't hug your wife, don't hug your children. Sick. The stupid will believe in it and ask to be treated. Notice I'm not going to say that word. We will have taken care of having panned the treatment. A treatment will be the solution. The selection of idiots will therefore be done by itself. They will go to the slaughterhouse alone. Listen to the mindset of these people. Do you think they care about you? Do you think they care about your health? Do you think they care about your children's future? Listen to the consciousness and intention underneath it. I'm begging you to do that. Then he says, oh, this is the next one. A news anchor on the news media right now just slipped, called a Freudian slip, where he stated almost 4 months into that campaign, the providers are beginning to run out of people who want to be euthanized. That was the term he said, euthanized. Euthanize. What does euthanize mean? It appears the dumb people have already self-selected themselves. Now, I want to make a slight divergence here and make an absolute plea and a pause and maybe a recommendation. I have native blood in me as well. Native indigenous people of this country and other countries, continents, have been under a 500-year genocidal assault. It's a fact. If you don't know that, you haven't studied history or learned from history, and go ask them. They will tell you. They are a minority in this country right now. Many still live on reservations. They are very frightened. of pandemics and plagues and diseases because of some of what happened in the early history on this continent and in Central America and South America as well. And they have been led to believe they are at greater risk, maybe they are, or that their test percentages are higher, those tests that we know are not foolproof. So they're attempting 100% that to all those populations. That is an absolute horrible criminal disaster, in my opinion. I'm begging you, pause and stop this. Don't let them complete a 500-year genocide upon you. They're not telling you the truth. Now, don't believe me. I want you to go do the research, and I'm going to give you the names of a group of world-class medical experts now speaking out about this very clearly, very scientifically, and very courageously, because they're all under attack for doing so. Dr. Lee Merritt, unprecedented qualifications, military doctor as well, and military experience. Dr. Christine Northup, one of the ultimate experts on women's health in the world. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, brilliant doctor who's probably studied this science and these campaigns more than anyone in the world and has been speaking out about the truth about this. Dr. Larry Palevsky, brilliant doctor, also very much involved in bringing out the truth about that and cancer. Dr. Andrew Kaufman, Dr. Andrew Wakefield, and recently, Dr. Simone Gold of America's Frontline Doctors. I particularly want to comment on her. She is the daughter of Holocaust survivor that I talked about in the last podcast. This horrible Holocaust of Nazi Germany. She is the daughter of survivors of that. She's an attorney and a world-class doctor. She's speaking out very boldly and using even more bold language than I am about the truth of that, okay? And has an organization of other brilliant medical people called America's Frontline Doctor. Get a hold of them. They will help you stop this genocide against indigenous and native peoples. You must do this. And Renette Senum, she was actually the mayor of Nevada City, California. Nevada City, California? Yeah, Nevada City. Right on the border, Nevada, California. Who's also very outspoken and is speaking with these doctors on many conferences and roundtable discussions because she's very passionate about this. Now, you see why I'm doing this? I'm not going to use the term that they are bombarding you with 24/7 on every form of media because it's not one of those. It is an experimental medical device and treatment issued under emergency authorization, not FDA approved, with no real studies for safety. And the studies that were done killed all the animals when they began to be re-exposed to live viruses afterwards. This is a extensively enhanced biowarfare program. And right now, these doctors, if you look up these doctors, they've come together and are speaking about the secondary effects of what is happening with symptoms and word coming in all over the world that those that have been this, they've taken this and had contact with those that have not. Those that have not are now experiencing a host of very negative health effects and symptoms. And everyone's trying to figure out the mechanism of this and how this is actually working. But this is the second stage of it that was even spoken about in Rockefeller Project Lockstep, and those behind the gates of there openly said would be happening, and how they would bring the world to their knees and bring the world population down to a very small number compared to what it's here now. And this creature from behind those gates openly always predicts the next phase and is now saying we will never get out of wearing masks. And more dangerous pandemics and plagues like Ebola and others are coming to get our attention. And now some climate change emergency is about to be launched. Now, how are they going to do that? They're going to engineer that with weather warfare and HARP? Or are we truly entering the worst drought in the western United States in 1,200 years? Anyway, how do they know this is all coming? How do they know? How, they got crystal balls? Are they psychic? I don't think so. They know the agenda. They make the agenda happen, and it's all done with intention. And yet, openly admit it, brag about it, and announce it ahead of time like, gee, look how smart I am. I know what's coming next. Well, I want you, everybody out there, to be smart and know what's coming next and be prepared to protect yourself, to protect your loved ones, and to survive all this madness, because it is madness. Now, my buddy here probably has a few questions he would like to interject at this time. So if you do, please ask some questions.
I think you're doing a really amazing job of just covering all the facts and covering.
Did I cover it?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a lot of just quotes, and it's great. It's wonderful.
All right, so he doesn't have any right now, or he's thinking of them. So I'm going to talk about preparedness, because I've been a preparedness consultant and lived preparedness consciousness all my life. And that is the key. You don't want to just react in fear, and you don't want to just react in an emergency. You need to develop a consciousness of preparedness that's 24/7. But I'm going to suggest and beg you to get as much food, clothing, and essentials you need for your life. Food, clothing, and shelter, those are the essentials. Everything else is built upon that foundation. Get as much of that as you can afford to get and store for as long a period as you can afford to do it for. 2 to 3 years would be the minimum, in my humble opinion. If you still have more resources after doing that for yourself and your family, help someone you care about. Find someone who is not so fortunate to be able to provide for their preparedness. Help them do it. Join with a group, whether it's your church, whether it's a business organization, whether it's whomever. Help someone else do this. We are stronger if we work together, obviously. That's the key. These people work together with absolute focus, unified on their agendas. That's why they're happening. And they keep us divided and about every conceivable thing, just as they said they would, way back in 1773, so that we don't work together for our survival and our preparedness and our thrival. I'm going to use that word. There've been some videos made about that called thrival. I don't want this to be seen only in a grim survival understanding. We deserve to have a life in which we thrive. We deserve to have a life in which we thrive. We deserve to have a life that we can make the world better for the next generations. Otherwise, we have failed as human beings. And we can't let this mindset and this consciousness create failure, or our species could be in for a very tragic scenario in the future. And these people brag about wanting that, about thinking that's for the greater good. That's one of the lies and terms they use, for the greater good. The greater good for whom? If it's not the greater good for every single individual, then it's not the greater good for the whole. You can't deny the rights, the health, and the freedoms of individuals for some notion of collective public good. Those are communistic, socialistic concepts, but you've been programmed to accept them, all right? That's got to stop. That's got to stop. So prepare yourself with all the natural remedies that you may need for any number of circumstances. And I brought one today that I want to talk about. I mentioned a few on the last podcast, but I've got another because we've been talking about it lately. Colloidal silver water, or nano silver water. It's marketed in different ways. You see this? You can spray this right in your eyes. You can spray this in your throat. You can spray it up your nose. It is extraordinarily effective on all pathogenic organisms, bacterias, molds, funguses, and viruses. You can make this yourself. You get pure silver coins, you get a little generator, you hook the electrodes to it, you can make it yourself, you can buy it. It's not expensive to buy, and you can make it yourself. This, I think, is so versatile. You can spray it topically on any injuries on the skin, sores on the skin, cuts, wounds, infections. So it can be used topically and internally. Whereas I talked about Palo Santo oil last time is only topical and breathing the vapors into your lung. You don't ingest it internally. Colloidal silver water has proved itself in tropical countries against really nasty outbreaks like Ebola, which the people behind the gates of hell keep telling us is coming next because they had something to do with it in Africa. Those were intentional outbreaks. Those were test runs in other countries, okay? It didn't just happen. Colloidal silver water is superb for so many things. I urge you to get this or make this, okay? Very good one. Get food, clothing, and shelter for up to 2 to 3 years. Help others. Do the research on all the natural remedies, preventions, and treatments. Now, I prefer this. A lot of people have been talking about chlorine dioxide. MMS, miracle molecule. It's marketed as a 2-part product that many people have used. In my own personal experience as an alternative health consultant for decades, I will say it has its uses, it has proved itself, but you need to be careful of chlorine anything. Chlorine molecule in nature is very disruptive and can be dangerous to your body in some ways. If you're going to use chlorine dioxide, eat raw aloe gel or drink aloe juice so it doesn't harm your stomach lining or your GI tract. The same is true if you're going to use grape seed extract or food grade hydrogen peroxide, which many people are using for many things that they're concerned about now. Protect your gut with aloe or aloe juice. And aloe, by the way, is one of the greatest detoxing agents that you can ever use. It detoxes heavy metals as good as anything there is, and is the food you want to feed the healthy flora in your gut, which is very, very important today. Gut health is very critical to your overall health. So aloe I highly recommend. And take baths with bentonite clay, Epsom salts, baking soda, and a little dip of Palo Santo. Really, 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 really good for detoxing your body. Your skin is the largest organ in your body. People don't often think of it as being an organ, but it is. Okay? You have to take care of your skin, and baths like that are very good at detoxing metals. All the chemicals they're spraying in the chemtrail spray programs, which are real, they're not theoretical, they're real. And some of the issues that have come up with Morgellons disease, synthetic biology, the little filaments that are being found coming out of people's skin with Morgellons. And in the masks now, they're finding those same fibers in the masks, the surgical masks that they want to try to force you to wear. So I think I've covered the really important things I wanted to cover today. Any questions from my friends? Any questions? Anything I can address or add? Whoa, I did really, really good then. Okay, so this is, now I want to say, my friends here that have created the Truth Arc, these are wonderful people. They've woken up in the last year or two, and they are very passionate about doing everything they can to make a difference. That's what we're here today for this wonderful march. We're going to march up and down the streets of Seattle in front of the gates of hell here, let them know we're not going to tolerate this stuff. And the Truth Arc is open to sponsorship from people who care about this. I see many other people making podcasts and creating videos and things to wake people up. If you have a product related to preparedness, to health, and alternative medicine, and you're aligned with the kind of thing you're hearing on these podcasts, we welcome your product and we welcome your sponsorship so that we can free our time up to be absolutely devoted to these causes. Because people, listen to me, half the population, adult population of America has now taken this, okay? I want you to think of all the ramifications and consequences of that. Half the population of America, adult, and now they want to put it in children and people under 16. Even though the information is coming out about the secondary effects of even having contact with those who took it. Now that's not fully understood and being explained yet, but it's very serious. So put a pause on all this. Don't let them march you off the cliff. Educate yourself from all those doctors I just mentioned and protect your children at all costs. So contact Truth Arc at www.trutharc.org if you want to participate in any fashion. Knowledge, information, products, support. We got to do this together, people. We love you. Stay safe. Until the next podcast.